Hello everyone, welcome back to Nicholas's Cars. Today we are going to be talking about some interesting unknown supercars, because last week I did the JDM list, the top JDM cars list, and that video did quite well. And also, by the way, I mentioned on Instagram that I would be having a video coming up at the car show we saw in Malibu. Unfortunately, camera didn't have stabilization on, so I'm still working out the car show thing, so there won't be a video of that, unfortunately, but there will be a video of that, a video of next week's car show probably, but I can't, I've learned now not to, promise anything until the video is uploaded. Anyway, but today we're going to talk about some pretty crazy supercars. I've done some research, found some crazy supercars that are just generally forgotten, and ones that are not thought about too much, and let's get into it. Okay, first off is the Gumper De Paulo, which is actually a supercar that I really like. It's a supercar built by a company called Gumper, which is sounds like a candy company name or something. It's a hilarious name for a company insane supercars like this. Was the fastest car in the Nürburgring once, and it's funny looking. I would agree slightly, but some people say it's hideous, but I think it's actually kind of cool looking. I think that's probably not most people's opinion, but I think the Gumper De Paulo is cool. 0 to 60 it did in 3.1 seconds. It had between 640 and 789 horsepower, so it was a really powerful car from the 4.2 liter V8. I'm pretty sure it's the Audi V8, same one, the Spiker C8, and a few other cars actually, and also in a few Audi R8s. It's a really crazy looking car, and they are like, actually, for what, I'm not sure how much they cost new exactly, but for what they are used, one did come up for sale a year or two ago, and like the one that actually broke the Nürburgring record for around $400,000. There are even ones that have been around $300,000. So for that money, it's such a crazy rare unknown supercar. I would actually buy one of those because I think it's a really cool thing, especially around here in America. Like, imagine driving that thing around the street, something that looks like this. It'd be so cool. All right, next up is the 9FF GT9, and this is an interesting idea. I'm not sure why the company calls itself 9FF. We have another weird company name, which maybe is something that doesn't set you up for success with a car company. But regardlessly, they still make this car, the GT9, which is based on the 997. It's the fastest car they make. They tune other 911s and modify other cars, but the GT9 is still the top of their lineup. It's based on the Porsche 997, but they essentially put the engine in the middle, the same flat six, but they twin turbo it. So it's 6-speed manual. They have several different versions. The Club Sport with only 750 horsepower, and they have all the way up to the VMAX, which is like, it's 1400 horsepower, twin turbo 997 essentially. It'll do 271 miles an hour, like faster than the Veyron. So the car should probably be more famous, but unfortunately it isn't. It's a crazy looking thing. It's got some funny angles, but it looks really cool to me. I have no idea what they're worth. I don't know how much they cost new or whatever. I'm not sure, but I think I would be willing to pay a lot for these. And these are my favorite kind of cars, which is why I was really excited to make these videos. These insane forgotten supercars. So this video is definitely a interesting one to research. All right, next up is the Caparro T1, and the Caparro T1 is actually not really unknown, because the video actually has close to 6 million views of the Top Gear review where the floor fell out, if I'm not mistaken, and the show 5th Gear, it caught on fire. So it's not exactly known for being reliable, but it was a crazy car. I mean, cornering was like 2 Gs or something. It was a crazy thing. It weighed like 1,000 pounds, had a 3.5 liter V8, but any custom engine built by a British car company I imagine would not be very reliable. It weighed 1,000 pounds. Yeah, it was just 0 to 60 was 2.9. It was an incredibly fast car, but it was known for being slightly dangerous and not very reliable. But I don't know what these are worth either, but they are really cool. Alright, next up is the Bristol Fighter, and the Bristol Fighter was quite an interesting car when it came out. It's a kind of normal looking-ish sports car. It looks a bit like a TVR, which we're going to talk about TVR pretty soon actually, but it is a very cool car. And the Bristol Fighter was the idea essentially to take a British sports car and put a Viper V10 in it. So the normal one has a Viper V10 like 500 something horsepower, 525 horsepower, and 500 pound-feet of torque. The car is really fast, and 0 to 60 like 4 seconds. Really fast, I think pretty fast top speed. I'm guessing around somewhere 180, 190 miles an hour. But the car was crazy. I mean, I'm sure it would be quite sketchy to drive. And then the Bristol, and you could get a 6-speed manual or a 4-speed auto, which is hilarious to have a car with a Viper engine, 550 horsepower, and 4-speed auto. But then there was the Fighter T, or Fighter Turbo, I guess maybe, which was never put in production, which is kind of sad. But it was supposed to be a twin turbo Bristol Fighter, 1,012 horsepower, 1,000 pound-feet torque, top speed of apparently 270 miles an hour, except it was limited to 225, but it was never built, so there may be only 1 or 2 of those. But it was quite a cool car, and the normal Bristol Fighter is still one heck of a sports car if you could get your hands on one. A lot of these cars are mostly sold in Europe. In fact, there isn't an American car. There's one American car on this list, but the generally it's like Americans generally don't make these obscure supercars. I'm not exactly sure why, but we're going to talk about the American one later. Alright, next up is the RUF CTR tree, and the RUF CTR tree was based on the Porsche Cayman, and a car I've known about for a little bit, and built by RUF, the company that does all kinds of insane Porsche creations. And the RUF CTR tree is essentially a Cayman, but essentially like the 9FF GT9, they put the engine in the middle, and they put twin turbos on the flat six, so 777 horsepower and 6-speed manual. It looks crazy. It's a really cool looking thing. I don't know. I think these are worth probably a lot more than the GT9, just because RUF is a well-known brand. But this thing will do 236 miles an hour, which is pretty impressive for a Porsche Cayman. I mean, people say a Porsche Cayman GT4 feels quick and is a great driving car. I love to compare it to one of these because this is like the ultimate evolution of the Cayman. Alright, next up, and this car is probably my favorite car on this list, and one of the more iconic cars ever. Really, one car, if I was going to own one particular car in the world, it might be this one. The TVR Speed 12, which had a 7.7 liter V12, which is a crazy engine to think about. The car was so powerful that it blew up the dyno they tested it on, so they couldn't actually get an actual horsepower number. You know, people say that actual number is between 800 and 1,000, and horsepower number I got was 960. So it was extremely powerful. It was meant to be a McLaren F1 killer, but it was not as reliable as McLaren F1. It was way more sketchy than McLaren F1. It would apparently do 240 miles an hour, which I might have just said. But 0 to 60 was less than 3 seconds. But the founder of TVR, named Peter Wheeler, drove it at that time, and he, after one commute, he realized the car was too dangerous to drive on the road, and he completely scrapped it. They sold the car to a guy in like 2003 or something. It was a road car, but it had race bodywork on it. And the car did go racing a little bit, even though it wasn't super successful. They planned to race it in Le Mans. But regardlessly, the one that was sold, the road legal one, there's almost no video of it. There's video of another TVR, but I think that's a race car one, either converted to street or a different modified one. I don't know if that's the actual. I don't think that's the actual one. There's one video on YouTube. I'll leave a link to it in the description. That it's terrible quality video of the TVR around Silverstone, but you can get an idea that this car was really, 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 really special, and the only one of its kind. So I hope someday that this one will be brought out on the track again, because that would be a really, really cool thing to see. So let's hope the owner is someone who likes to drive it. Alright, next up is the Honda Hs V10 Gt, and this car, I actually saw the name originally. I thought it was an HSV or something. I didn't even see the word Honda, but Honda Hs V10 GT. They were apparently potentially like a V10 version. It was supposed to be like the new NSX essentially, but it was just then it ended up just becoming a super GT racer. Had a 3.4 liter V8, 6-speed sequential. There wasn't like that much special about it, but what was interesting is that it was going to be the new NSX. But then the actual new NSX came along and the Super GT racer looked like it, that kind of replaced the whole thing. But we would have had, if they had made it with a V10 like they said they would have, then we would have had like a Lexus LFA car, like inspired like Japanese supercar with V10. It would have been cool to have the two of them compete against each other. Unfortunately, it never did happen. Alright, next up is the Yamaha OX9911, and Yamaha has made everything from engines to pianos to motorcycles to boats to ATVs. They make a lot of different stuff, but the Yamaha OX9911 was a crazy supercar that they thought they could use essentially to kind of be like a McLaren F1 killer. I think McLaren F1 was kind of a target car with them. They took a 3.5 liter V12, a Formula 1 engine if I'm not mistaken, and they put it in a car that looks absolutely insane. I think it's a single seater. It's just a berserk looking thing. It looks really cool. And it's got some definitely 90. Looks like it's designed in the 90s, but it's a really, really cool supercar. And it had 10,000 RPM redline, but they was never built. There may be one or two concept cars, and there may be one or two videos of them out there. I didn't look it up, but I know the car does sound insane. And unfortunately, a lot of these cars never really get taken out, and they're very, very rare. But the Yamaha OX9911 shows what would have happened if Yamaha had decided to build supercars, which they did not. Alright, next up is the Panaz Esperanti GTR1, and it's a very interesting, the Panaz story is quite an interesting story of an American businessman, I think, who wanted to go racing in Le Mans, and he decided to go ahead and make this thing, which has some of the wildest looks in the world. Some people would say it's ugly. I think it's kind of cool. I think it is funny looking though. I mean, it's such a crazy looking thing. The colors that you get, and even you see the colors on these, like a crazy purple, yellow kind of blends. Like, it's a crazy looking thing, and green and everything. I mean, the car looks really cool. It had a 6 liter V8, 600 horsepower, like 500 pound-feet of torque. It was a 6-speed sequential also, I think. The car was also raced in GT1. I'm not sure how well it did, but it looks crazy, and it's another supercar. Penals apparently says they will still build for you if you give them enough money. I'm not sure how much money you have to give them, but if you give them enough money, apparently you get one. And this is an extremely cool supercar, and one that if I had a lot of extra millions lying around, I would buy one of these, because I think it's just something that's just very different from the next supercar and the next supercar, which is all Lamborghini and Ferrari and everything. And that was kind of the purpose of these cars, and another reason why I find them so interesting. Alright, last but definitely not least is the Axiom Mega Track, which was which is the most. I knew this thing was crazy, but I didn't know it was this crazy. Just like a few minutes ago, I really did this research for the video, and it was crazy. It's an off-road supercar, which is kind of obvious when you look at the pictures. 400 horsepower Mercedes V12, but somehow it has 4 seats. It weighs 5,000 pounds, so like it weighs as much as 4 of the Caparro T1. I mean, it's an extremely heavy car, but I mean, 4 seats in that car. I don't know, like, I'm really confused. 5,000 pounds, like I said, really heavy. 87 inches wide, which if these stuff is correct, which I'm pretty sure it is. I mean, I don't know how many people have really been able to measure these things, but I mean, that's wider than like a Hummer and full-size pickup trucks. It's a crazy giant thing. It did 0 to 60 in something like 6 seconds, which is actually pretty fast for a thing like this. I'm not sure if it's 4-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive, but I'm assuming it's probably rear-wheel drive. I mean, if purpose-built off-road, maybe it's 4-wheel drive, but it's such a crazy-looking thing. After this was made, though, the company decided to go back to city cars and stuff, which I was kind of shocked at when I looked Axiom up on Wikipedia. That's an interesting choice of car. It's an interesting car they made there. Yeah, it's just there isn't much in the world. If you want a car that was like an off-roader and a supercar, which very few people wanted, this is what you got essentially, and it's such a crazy car. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's video. This is some of the cars I'm most interested in, and it's just these were just really cool. They were kind of the forgotten, awesome supercars in especially like around the 1990s and early 2000s. I mean, all these cars were overshadowed by cars like the McLaren F1, Ferrari F50, the Veyron, the Koenigseggs, the LaFerrari, the P119. All these cars that came out around that time had always been overshadowed by their like big company rivals. So these cars are really cool though, and I hope you have an appreciation for them too after watching this video. And yeah, someday it'd be really awesome to get one of these things. I don't know, I think the Gumper De Paulo might be the most affordable of these, but I hope you enjoyed that look at some cool, probably unreliable, awesome forgotten supercars. And be sure to give this video a like if you enjoyed it.